Masechet Eruvin, Daf Mem Chet, page 48. Just the last two lines on 47b. We have Taneh Rabbi Chia, Cherem sheben techumei Shabbat, tzarich mechisa shel barzel lafsiko. So Rabbi Chia taught the following baraita, that if you have a ditch between two eruvin, you need an iron divider between them. Let me show you a picture here. So you have let's say a city here and one here, and so the Techum Shabbat, the 2,000 Amot between them, ends up inside some kind of a stream or a lake. And so if a person wants to be able to go and into this water area, he's saying you need an absolute iron divider, because the water moves around, and some of the water that's here will move over there, and some of the water that's in this side will move on this side. And therefore, since this is all mixed together, so it's a problem. If you're a person from the city in the west, and you go there, then you're going to be using some of the water that was actually in the city on the right, and then moving it around. So therefore, you have to separate this into two separate water streams. Okay, that's his halacha. That's the braita that Rabbi Chia. Mechayecha le Rabbi Yoseh b'Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Yoseh heard this teaching and he laughed at it. Okay, this is very interesting. So now we're going to analyze, why did he laugh at this teaching? And we'll offer four different possibilities to try to figure out what did he disagree? It's not only disagreeing, he's like that's ridiculous, kind of a smirk. Only in the Talmud was, one rabbinic smirk from 2,000 years ago require a page of discussion of what was he smirking about. Okay, so my ta'amaka mechayech ilema mishum detanila ke Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri lechumra v'yusibira le kerabanan lekula mishum desabal lekula man detane lechumra mechayech ala. So if we remember, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, he's the one that says that an ownerless object acquires its place, and therefore an ownerless object has that place and can't be moved more than 2,000 amot from wherever it started on Shabbat. According to the rabbis, an ownerless object does not acquire a place, so therefore anyone who picks it up can move it around. And so in this case, this water is an ownerless object, and so this Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is actually chumrah in this case, because this water as an ownerless object acquires its place, and therefore it's stuck where it is. And so that's why he's saying you need an iron bar to separate the water on this side and another water on that side. Otherwise, you're removing the water from where it was and moving it to a place you're not allowed. And whereas he, Rabbi Yoseh, agrees with Rabbanan, and so he's more mekel, and therefore, if it's water that I'm touching or that goes on my clothes and I'm moving around, it's okay because it did not acquire a place. Well, hold on. Now you're going to laugh at me. You're going to laugh at Rabbi Chia just because I'm machmir, because he's machmir like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, right? Fine, you agree with the lenient opinion, but you shouldn't deride someone who agrees with the stringent opinion. That's not a good reason. You could just disagree, but not a reason to smirk at it. Rather, maybe he mocked it because for a different reason, where we saw a braita that says flowing rivers and springs, since they're moving around all the time, they never can acquire a place. And so therefore, they don't have that spot, and they're like, whoever goes there and picks it up is allowed to move it around wherever they want. And that's why he laughed at it, because this is water. It's always moving around. It doesn't acquire a place. You don't have to put an absolute divider. But that's also not a good reason to deride it, because B'dilma bimchunasin, we don't know exactly what kind of water this was. Maybe it was an enclosed lake or puddle, a pool. And so therefore, mechunasin, even though the water does move around, it's not flowing. So that's an important distinction, that water that is within an enclosed body does acquire its place, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. So that's not a good reason for him to have smirked. אלא משום דקתנא צריך מחיסה של ברזל להפסיקו. ומה ישנה קנים דלילה בהומיה של ברזל נמי אילו בהומיה. Rather, smirking because it says you need an iron partition. It says, well, what's the difference between an iron partition and one made out of reeds, right? Because one made out, if you make it just out of reeds, then the water will go in and out. Even if you make it out of iron, right? Still, it's not going to be watertight. It's going to go around the sides. It's going to go on over the top, and you make a dam that's 100% waterproof. It's not going to happen. So that's what he's saying. Is this image of an iron curtain, that partition. No, maybe what he meant is that if you wanted to use it, you would need an iron partition, and it's impossible. So basically saying the point of the Braita, Rabbi Chiya's Braita, is that it's impossible to divide water in that way, and therefore you can't go and make use of that water and move it around at all, because it's impossible to divide. That's his point. He's not thinking that you could really do it. All right. Mishum dekalahu shekelu chachamim b'mayim. So rather, why was Rabbi Chiya? So that was not a good reason. Rather, the reason why Rabbi Yosef disagreed is because he said we always have the rabbis always have a special leniency regarding water, that you don't need as much of a partition when you're dealing with water than with other things. As we saw this, like, when you have a well and you can put the four corners, right? So access to water is always something that the rabbis want to be lenient about. As once Rabbi Tabla was asked Rav, if you have a suspended partition, right? In other words, the wall, like have a top half of the wall, but under it is empty. Is that okay in Eruvin, a house where the bottoms of the walls fell down and just the tops of some of the walls are suspended? And he says, no, that's not good on land, but in water, it is good. And we saw example of that, like on a ship. If you outside the edge of a ship, if you want to lower a bucket and get water out, you can create a square partition that goes down somewhat. Doesn't have to go to the bottom of the ocean, but we extend it as if it goes down. And so too here, since this is a case of water, you wouldn't need an absolute iron partition all the way down. All you would need is some kind of, like a net that would be on top. And then we imagine it going all the way down, and so that would be sufficient. And you wouldn't, so it was made out of reeds or anything. It wouldn't have to be made out of iron and go all the way down and really be waterproof. And that's the reason that he disagreed, and that's why he smirked. Okay, good. Now we're going to continue with the Mishnah, where it says Chachamim Omrim En Lo Ela Arba, and let's just go back to that Mishnah so that we can see it again here. The Mishnah had said, someone who is sleeping, that's what Rabbi Yochanan says, he acquires this place. Chachamim say, En lo ela arba amot, right? So that's the majority opinion, says a person sleeping or anyone who doesn't acquire a place has only 4 amot, his own personal space. Rabbi Eliezer says he has to be in the middle, so in other words, only 2 all around him. And then Rabbi Yehuda says he can choose any which way he wants to go. He can choose, 4 to the east, 4 to the west. But he agrees that once you decide, then you can't change it. Okay, so what we're going to ask now is, what's the difference between Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda says you can go any way you want. But what did Chachamim say? They said you have 4 amot, and they didn't specify. It sounds like they're saying the same thing, right? So, but they're listed separately. So what is the difference between Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda? We know Rabbi Eliezer is more machmir here, because you can't choose. You have to be right in the middle of 2 amah radius. Okay, so that's our question. Rabbi Yehuda, hainu tanakama. Amarava shemone al shemone ika benaihu. No, there is a difference. According to the Chachamim Tanakama, they say you have a 4 amah a radius, and you can go 4 amot in any direction. So for a total of 8 by 8. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, no, a total of 4 by 4. And you have to pick only one direction. You can't go anything in the other direction. Okay, so that's very important. Tanyan mehachi yesh lo shemone al shemone dibire Rabbi Meir. We have a braita that proves that because Rabbi Meir, and we say an anonymous Mishnah is usually the opinion of Rabbi Meir. And so, and he says 4 8 by 8. So there you go. The Chachamim's opinion is 4 in any direction all at the same time, for a total 8 by 8. Good. Says all of this dispute is only regarding to walking in terms of a techum Shabbat, that you have that, you can move around in that amount of space. But in terms of carrying, if it's Reshut Harabim, then everyone agrees that the Reshut Harabim carrying is 4 Amot only, in whatever direction you're traveling in. If you're carrying something, it's only 4 Amot. Okay. Now, what is the source for 4 Amot? This is very important because we've seen 4 Amot, come up a million times. And so finally, what is the biblical source for it? It says, no one should leave his place, right? This is regarding man, that you should go and collect the double man before on Friday and not leave their place on Shabbat itself. So what does that mean to not leave your place? I mean, this is some sectarian groups thought that means you can't leave your home, and they'd sit at home all day and not even go out. And the pshat, it means don't go out to collect man. Don't go out to the field. Don't go out to work and do agricultural work. But here the rabbis are using it for somewhat. Here they're saying don't leave your techum, don't leave your city, and the outskirts of 2,000 amot beyond it. But if you don't have a place, then you're stuck. So so your place, don't leave your place. We say kit tachtav. Don't leave as an area equal to the space that you take up. Right. So in other words, if you don't establish a spot, and so you could have Techum Shabbat, then you can't leave your personal domain. And so how much is that? How much space does a person take up? Well, a person is average of 3 cubits tall. If you take your arm length from here to here and multiply by 3, then you get an average height of a person. And a little more to be able to stretch out. So another amah, if you want to put your hands up, right, that would be, and stretch your toes out, that would be another amah. So that's 3 of the height of the person, plus 1 is 4. Rabbi Yehuda omer, gufo 3 amot, ve'amah kedesh yitol chefetz mitachat margelotav, u'maniach tachat mirashotav. A similar calculation. 3 is the height of the person, and then another amah to move around. If you had some object that was at your feet and you want to move it and put it under your head, so to be able to maneuver above and below a little bit, that is an extra amah. So you get that. So interestingly, 4 amot is about 6 feet, which is what we are using now for personal space for social distancing. So there's a good source for keeping your having your own 6 feet away from everybody else. Okay, so that's the 2 derivations. My benayu, what is the difference between them? Is it exactly 4 cubits, or you have a little extra? Here's a good picture for that. So according to the first opinion that says so that you can stretch up and down, it'll end up being slightly more than 4 amot. Whereas according to the one that you want to take an object and move it from here to here, then really all you need is 4 amot precisely. So there's a slight difference between them. All right, good. That's really important to see. We had him before. He's the one that said we don't. Okay, interestingly, it comes up again. There's certainly linkage between each sugya and the next. So he tells his son, listen, I know you're going to study with Rav Papa. When you see him, please ask him the following question. When we say that a person who has no place can walk 4 amot, around him, is that objective or subjective? Is it his own ama? In other words, a short person would move less, and a tall person who has longer arms can move more? Or is it the absolute cubit of the that we use for the Mishkan to measure the kelim and for everything else? Is it the standard cubit or the personal cubit arm length? All right, good question. If you say it's the standard measurement, then what about someone who's very, very tall, like Og? Doesn't mean exactly him. I don't know. He wasn't Jewish, so he didn't have to worry about Tchum Shabbat. But right, someone who's very tall, and you tell him you can only have the standard 6 feet, so then that won't be enough for him to lie down and stretch out. And if you say it's your own personal measurement, then this should have been mentioned in a Mishnah in Kelim. There's a Mishnah in Kelim that says, here's all the following things that go by subjective personal measurement. And it lists a bunch of things, and this is not one of them. Interesting, one of the things that it mentions there is how much is one allowed to drink on Yom Kippur without violating the fast midoraita. And the answer is 1 cheekful, right? Which is about 1.4 ounces. So it says that's not an absolute 1.4 ounces for everyone. Depends how big your cheek is. If you're a little person, then it'll be less. Big person, it would be more. So that's a good halacha l'maaseh. So for those who need to drink on Yom Kippur. So that's mentioned there as a personal one. But this halacha about for Amot and on Tchum Shabbat is not mentioned there. So there you go. You see that therefore it's not a personal one. It must be an objective standard measurement. Okay, so now we're really not sure what to do. So that was the question. To go ask Rav Papa. Rav Papa says if you're going to be so precise in analyzing Mishnayot, you won't be able to teach anything, right? Just because the Mishnah listed a whole bunch of things and didn't say this one, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's excluded. Mishnah was talking about a certain category of things, wasn't including everything in the whole world. In other words, if you're going to be that exact, we wouldn't be able to ever teach anything because we're going to be having to deal with these detailed textual problems. Okay, that's an interesting kind of self-aware methodology. Okay, but it does in fact have an answer to it. It really is your personal subjective arm length. And the reason why it's not mentioned, the format does not mention that Mishnah, is because it's not absolute clear cut. You could have a person who is tall but who has short limbs, some kind of genetic problem. And so that person, it wouldn't make sense to go by his own arm lengths because they're shorter than in ratio to his body. And so that person, we would allow him to have the standard amot based on, so to accommodate for his height. And therefore, since it's not, it depends on case by case, therefore we can't make an absolute rule. But in general, it would go by the size of the person. All right, good. So we have the answer to that. Now, we get to the next case in the Mishnah, the last case of the Mishnah. If the people were in such a position like this, that you have they're overlapping. The middle one, the middle person is overlapping the tchum on the right and the left, but the one on the right and left are not overlapping with each other. So therefore, the middle person could sit and eat with and use things together with the left or the right, but the outer two cannot be together with each other. Okay, that was Mishnah. Okay, and then after that, let's look at the Mishnah one more time. So that was this halacha, the 3 people. And then the Bishimon says, what is this similar to? It's similar to 3 chatzerot, 3 courtyards that are open to each other, right, which was the next picture, 3 courtyards where if these two make an eruv and these two make an eruv, they can someone can carry from the left to the middle, and the middle people can also carry from the middle to the right and back and forth. But the one on the left cannot carry all the way to the one on the right because there's no eruv between the left and the right, only between the middles. So Rabbi Shimon is coming and saying these two cases are similar, right? This one is talking about the eruv techomin, and the last case is talking about eruv hatzerot. But they're both the same basic principle that you can't combine the left two with the right two so that the extremes could carry to each other. So now we're asking, why do you have to add that? Why do you have to say this is similar to something else? I mean, what is that adding to us, to our knowledge, the fact that these cases are similar? So here's what it means. ופתוחות לרשות הרבים. מה ישנה הטעם בפליגריתו, ומה ישנה אחת דלה פליגריתו. Actually, Rabbi Shimon, this is a challenge that Rabbi Shimon is giving to the Rabbanan. It says, you agree to this principle when it comes to Eruv Techumin, that if someone's personal space on the right and the left, their 4 Amot doesn't overlap, they can't go from one to the other, but the middle can do both. So we all agree to that. Why don't you agree with me then regarding Eruv Chatzerot, right? Regarding this last case. So now we see that the Rabbanan do not agree with him. And they would say that it's prohibited to carry within any of them, even from the left to the middle to the right. Okay, so what is the difference? Why are you arguing with me about that? Okay, but Rabbanan, so the rabbis answer, Hatam avshe diurin, hacha la avshe diurin. There, in the case of the courtyard, the residents are numerous. And so here's the problem. If we allow, go back to the picture, if we allow some of the people here, let's say I'm going to carry, I live here, I'm going to carry my book into the middle. Okay, now it's in the middle. Now I leave it there. Then someone else comes who lives over here, sees the book, and says, oh, I want to read this book, and they'll pick it up and carry it there. And there's a lot of people living in all these courtyards. So there's no way to communicate to say, oh, this book originated in the left, therefore it can only be used in the middle, and no one should move it to the right. No, there's no policeman that can keep track of every object. And so therefore we have to assume that some people won't get the message, and they will things will end up being carried from here to here and from here to here. So therefore, you're not allowed to carry. If you don't have if you make one eruv for all 3, that's great. But if you make 2 overlapping eruvin, it's no good. It's going to get messed up. That's why they say that. But in this case, we're only talking about 3 people because this is about personal space. So by definition, it's only 3 people. So if you have 3 people here, and this guy has some tuna fish, and he brings it over here, and this guy shares it and eats some tuna also. So he can that's fine. But you don't have to worry that he's going to then transfer it over here and give it to this guy, because it's only 2 people, and he knows that he just got it from this one. He's not going to transfer it to this. So it's controllable. So basically they're saying, in essence, yes, if it was really only 3 people living in the whole courtyard, then fine. But generally, courtyards have a lot of people living in them. And that's the difference. And here there are not numerous people. All right, that makes sense. Okay, shtayim chitzonot. Now the 2 outer courtyards cannot carry from one to the other, from extremes, and according to the Shimon. Now we're going to analyze this. Amai. Kevan da'arbi lehu chitzonot behadeh emsa'it havya lehu hada. Why not? Since the 2 outer ones each made an eruv with the middle one, so now they're all shared together. Right? Aren't they? Right? If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. So why not say, therefore, that you can carry within all of them? That's the question. So Rav Yehuda's answer is that when you have an eruv means the bread, the actual bread, you have to deposit it somewhere. You can deposit the eruv anywhere you want. But it may make a difference here. So when the left and the middle make an eruv, let's say they put the bread in the left courtyard, And when the middle and the right made an eruv, they put the bread in the right courtyard. So you see, that's the problem, that the two pieces of bread are in separate courtyards. And that's why you can't carry all throughout all. But according to this, if they each put their bread in the middle courtyard, then indeed, maybe then you would be able to share all of them. So that's Rav Yehuda's answer. That's why you can't carry, in that case, you can't carry from the left to the right. That's Rav Yehuda. Rav Sheshat Amar, afilu tema shenatnu eruvan be'emsa'it, kegon shenatnu b'shnei batim. Rav Sheshat, no, you can even say, you don't have to assume it's that case. You can even assume it's a case, you'd rather not have to limit it so much. You can even say it's a case where they put it in the middle, both in the middle courtyard. But the two on the left, when the left one, they put it in this house. And the eruv that they did with the right, he put it in that house. And so you see the two pieces of bread are not actually together. And so therefore, it's not a full partnership of all three. They're two separate partnerships, and therefore, you cannot carry from the left to the right. That's Rav Sheshat's opinion. Okay, now regarding Rav Sheshat, Kiman, who does he agree with? He seems to agree with Bet Shammai. This is not complimentary, right? If you're agreeing with Bet Shammai, that means that you're saying something that we're not going to follow la halacha. Keman ke Bet Shammai detanya hamisha shegabu et eruvan untanuhu b'shne kelim. Bet Shammai omrim en eruvan eruv, Bet Hillel omrim eruvan eruv. If we have 5 people and everybody contributed and they put the contributions of the meal into 2 different baskets. Bet Shammai says it's no good, non-eruv. Bet Hillel says it's fine. It can be in 2 different baskets. Sometimes you have a meal that's in multiple containers. Bet Hillel's okay with that. But Bet Shammai insists it has to be all in one container. And so Rav Sheshat, when you're telling me it's not good, it doesn't join together because in 2 different houses, so you sound like you're talking about Bet Shammai. They're in the same courtyard, right? So, but still, in 2 different houses, you're saying that they don't join together. That sounds like Bet Shammai, that in 2 different containers, they also don't join together. So this is really a challenge to Rav Sheshat, but he has an answer. Afilu tema Bet Hillel. Ad kan la ka'amar Bet Hillel hatam ela b'shne kelim bebayit ehad. Ava b'shne batim lo. There's a difference between 2 houses and 2 baskets, right? Bet Shammai only said it's no good. No, Bet Hillel only said it's no good when it's in 2 baskets in 1 house. But if it's in 2 houses, they would all agree that it's not valid. So, right. So Bet Hillel allows it to be in 2 baskets. That's fine. So Rav Sheshat could agree with that. The reason why Rav Sheshat said it's not good here is because you put in 2 separate houses. You don't put a meal in 2 houses. You put it in 2 baskets, but on 2 houses. So therefore, Rav Sheshat's fine. He can be reconciled with Bet Hillel. Okay, good. Now we're going to question each of them and bring an answer for these two opinions, Rav Yehuda and Rav Sheshat. And that'll be the end of the daf. Amar le Rav Aha bered Rav Avia le Rav Asher. Le Rav Yehuda kashya or Rav Sheshat kashya. Okay, this question is to Rav Asher, and we have a question on both in different directions. Rav Yehuda kashya, the Amar kegon shnatayim sa'it eruba bezov eruba bezov. Rav Yehuda said the reason why you can't carry all the way from one end to the other is because you put the bread one in the left courtyard, one in the right courtyard. Bechavan de'erbam sa'it ba'adeh chitzona havya lehada bechi hadra arva behadeh idach shelichuta abda. But so what? When you do that, let's say I did the middle and the right first. So, and I put it all the way in the right. Now, those are all one. When I go ahead and make the second eruv, so you can consider it as a shaliach, as an agent for that whole conglomeration of middle and right are now together, and they together make an eruv with the left. So, therefore, if I make one partnership, and that partnership makes another partnership, then they should all be actually together. So why don't you say that? So what if it's in 2 different places, right? I made one partnership, those together made a second partnership. So now all 3 should be linked to each other, and that should be okay. Okay, that's the question to Rav Yehuda. And from Rav Sheshat kashya, teve kachamisha shesheruyin behased hat ושכח אחד מהן ולא ערב, תעשרה ההדדה. Well, Rav Sheshat's question to him is, if you had 5 people that are in a courtyard and one of them did not join, did not give any bread, and didn't give his consent to be part of it, then no one is allowed to carry anywhere. So he says this case should be the same way, right? Because since you have one, let's say the left one is excluded from the middle on the right, so they didn't join it. So therefore, if they're all, since they're all connected courtyards and one didn't join, the one that's on the left one didn't join the one that's with the right, so he's excluded, and since he's excluded, then no one should be allowed to carry in any of them.
Didn't we say that it doesn't matter if somebody doesn't know or doesn't want it?
Well, we can do it on their behalf. So that's okay if we have them in mind and we say, I'm doing it on behalf of the other person. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case here. They didn't do that, right? They just said, we're doing it, just us two. We're doing it. They don't want to talk to the other guy. Okay. Yeah. And so, okay. So the Rav Acha Bered Rav Avia's questions are very sharp, because what he's doing is saying, Rav Yehuda, who said that they're in 2 separate courtyards, he says, but they should all join together and you can carry in all of them. And the question to Rav Sheshat is, they're even both put in the same courtyard in 2 different houses, and he says, oh, but they should all separate and not carry in any of them, right? So he's really using dialectical skill here and in cross-questioning them in the opposite way than we would actually think. Okay, so Rav Ashi answers all the questions, and he says, "Le Rav Ashi, la le Rav Yehuda kasha, vela le Rav Sheshat kasha, no problems. Ve Rav Yehuda la kasha, kivan de arba la emsait, ve'adeh chisona, u'shtayim chitzonot behadeh hadadeh lo ervu, gal yad da'ateh de behanichale u'beha la nichale." He says, since the middle guy and the one on the right made an eruv, and without the one on the left, that shows that they're actively excluding him, right? That makes a difference. Like if, we're all sitting around and, we're not playing poker together, so I'm not excluded. But if, 3 people go and they're playing poker and not me, then they're actively excluding me. So too here, so if since 2 of them made one and they didn't even ask the other guy, it shows that, so therefore you wouldn't say, well, this is one partnership and that partnership will then go and join the other one. And if they all wanted to join together, then they would have done that in the first place. The fact that they didn't include the other guy is a active a demonstration that they don't want him there, and that's why it doesn't work. Okay, so that's why these 2 can carry and these 2 can carry, but not from all the way from left to right. Well, Sheshat lakasha imamru diurin lahakel yomru diurin lehachmir. He says, okay, we said this law as a leniency, that the people in the courtyards are all considered residents of the middle courtyard, so that way you can carry from the left to the middle and this one to the other side. But we're not going to apply that as a stringency to say that, because the guy on the left didn't contribute to the one on the right, therefore even the 2 on the right can't carry with each other, right? They're not. We can consider them separate courtyards in terms of that. So this was the whole point of this was a leniency that these 2 can carry and these 2 can carry, and so that they are connected with each other for that. But you don't have to go and have to include all 3 together and then make a chumrah that because they didn't all contribute that they're all no good. So therefore, he was able to resolve both of those questions, and so we can end with everything being resolved.